50 years ago, a movie came out that didn't just scare people. It left a mark. It wasn't just a movie. It was like a cultural earthquake. So today, we're going to break down The Exorcist. We're not just looking at it as a scary movie, but as this huge cultural moment that, believe it or not, we're still arguing about. Ready? Let's get into it.
Just think about that line from Newsweek right after the movie came out. Since then, all hell has broken loose. Wow. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it? This wasn't just a blockbuster. It was something else entirely. It hit society like a tidal wave. The reaction was instant, it was raw, and honestly, nobody had ever seen anything like it.
And when I say chaos, I am not exaggerating. Look at this. People were fainting, throwing up. There were even reports of heart attacks and one alleged miscarriage right there in the theater. They had to station ambulances outside the cinemas. Can you imagine? And folks were lining up for blocks in the freezing cold, even starting riots when tickets sold out. So the big question we have to ask is how? How does one movie cause this much madness?
All right, so to figure that out, we've got to look at what was really a perfect storm of three things coming together. First up, the effect. The immediate, explosive impact the film had, which really was a phenomenon that started with the people watching it.
Now, that crazy reaction didn't come out of nowhere. It was all about the film's totally new approach to horror. This was the genius of the director, William Friedkin. He was obsessed with making it feel real, almost like you were watching a documentary. He grounded all the supernatural stuff in this gritty, brutal reality. And that created this whole new kind of horror that just felt way too possible.
So what's fascinating is that the movie doesn't start off as a classic good versus evil fight. Nope. It's something else. It's modern medicine, going head-to-head with this ancient, mysterious force. You just watch Regan's mom, Chris, frantically trying to find a logical reason for what's happening. They put poor Regan through this whole gauntlet of painful, invasive tests, looking for a brain lesion or something, anything physical. And it's only when science completely hits a wall, that's when the story finally has to turn to the one answer nobody wants to consider, something supernatural.
And you know what? For a lot of people in the audience, the scariest parts weren't even the demon scenes. It was the medical scenes. This quote from New Scientist at the time really gets at that. Think about that cerebral angiography scene. Friedkin shot it with this insane realism. You see the blood pumping from the carotid artery, you hear the loud clanking machines. He made the process of science itself look brutal and ultimately useless. So the horror felt chillingly real long before any head started spinning.
And then there's the sound. Oh my God, the sound design was a game changer. There's this media theory idea called noise. It's basically anything that just messes with our ability to understand what's going on. And that's exactly what the demon Pazuzu is in this film. The demon's voice isn't just, a spooky voice. It's this horrifying cocktail of buzzing insects, angry animal snarls, and garbled words. It's pure chaos, the sound of meaning itself falling apart.
Okay, but the movie being technically brilliant is just one piece of the puzzle. The second ingredient, and this one is huge, is how it plugged right into the anxieties of 1970s America. It hit a raw nerve.
You have to remember what the early 70s were like. It was just a period of massive turmoil. You had Watergate, the Vietnam War. People had lost faith in pretty much every major institution, the government, the church, science, even the idea of the perfect family. The whole country was basically questioning everything it believed in. It was a perfect breeding ground for anxiety.
So to really get why Regan's transformation was so deeply terrifying, there's this psychoanalytic idea called the abject. Basically, it's anything that shatters our sense of order and who we are. It's the stuff that breaks every rule, that crosses every line. We're talking about vomit, blood, a dead body. It's the ultimate violation of what's supposed to be.
And that is exactly what happens to Regan. Her body becomes the very definition of the abject. Peeing on the carpet in front of everyone, the projectile green vomit, the self-harm with the crucifix. These moments weren't just for shock value. They were a violent demolition of every single rule we have, social, religious, even biological. A 12-year-old girl's body became this battlefield for all of society's worst fears about everything just falling apart.
And that leads us right to our third and final ingredient, the incredible mythology that built up around the film's production. A legend that was, let's be honest, fanned by some very clever marketing that turned a hit movie into something else, a supposedly cursed event.
Yeah, the stories that came off that set are legendary. There was a fire that burned down the whole set, except for Regan's bedroom. How creepy is that? The two actors whose characters die in the film, they both passed away before the movie even came out. Both Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair got permanent back injuries from the stunts. All told, 9 deaths were connected to the production. It got so bad that the evangelist Billy Graham actually claimed the devil himself was in the very film stock.
But then you get the dose of reality. The writer and producer, William Peter Blatty, he just laid it out there. He said, look, if you're on a film shoot for an entire year, things are going to happen. People will get hurt, and sadly, people will die. It wasn't some supernatural curse, it was just statistics.
And this whole myth versus reality thing goes way beyond the set. The controversy around the movie, a lot of it was deliberately created. Everyone thought the Catholic Church hated the film, right? But the reality was, they actually saw it as a story that affirmed the power of faith, even giving it a special rating for adults. And all that public outrage and all those calls for bans, Warner Bros. Was pouring gasoline on that fire. There's an internal memo where someone literally says, one of the best things that could happen is if the Pope denounces it. They knew exactly what they were doing. Controversy sells.
So, we've looked at the science, we've looked at the culture, the controversy, which brings us to the big question. Why? 50 years on, why are we still so possessed by this movie?
Well, it's interesting because there's this big debate now among horror fans. You talk to younger fans who grew up on stuff like The Conjuring, and a lot of them say The Exorcist is, well, kind of slow. Today's horror is all about quick cuts and jump scares. But defenders of the original will tell you, yeah, those new movies are scary for sure, but they're missing the substance, that deep, unsettling feeling that The Exorcist just burrows into your brain.
And that, right there, is the heart of it all. The horror in The Exorcist was never really about the jump scares, the spinning head, the green vomit. Its lasting power comes from this head-on collision between two worlds, science versus faith, the modern age versus something ancient. It shows us a nightmare scenario where everything we rely on, medicine, therapy, a mother's love, it all just completely breaks down. And what's left? Just an ancient evil and an ancient ritual to fight it.
So, I guess I'll just leave you with this to chew on. Was the real demon in that movie a supernatural being named Pazuzu? Or was it a mirror? A terrifying reflection of our own deep-seated fears, about the limits of science, about how fragile our bodies are, and about what happens when all the systems we build to keep us safe just crumble. A fear that, if you think about it, feels just as real today as it did 50 years ago.